This is just some notes on fitting Oxford HotGrips to my BMW R NineT, and it's actually proved to be more difficult than I expected. The ones I've got here are the Premium Adventure, which are relatively long compared to the Sport version, for instance, which they need to be for the BMW. Anyway, just quickly on the near side here, the clutch side. It turns out that the switch gear here, and on this side as well as on the other side over here, are attached with a hole and a screw that's drilled through the handlebar. So on both sides there's a 4mm, I think it is, a hole drilled through the handlebar, and this little screw here goes right through. On this side it screws straight into a metal throttle component here, and the same is kind of true on the clutch side in terms of the drilling, but on the clutch side the screw is actually underneath the switch housing here, which splits in two, by the way. There's screws underneath, and it passes through a plastic inner tube that has the actual rubber grip over moulded on top of it. So this is the left hand grip, the original BMW version, and you can see there's a rigid plastic tube in there over moulded with the rubber of the grip. And before I cut the end off, I've cut this off here, the grip was attached to a sort of tongue that's poked out and had a hole in it, and that screw I just showed you on the other side. On this side the screw went through the plastic tongue and kept the grip located, so it couldn't twist and it couldn't come off either. So it's quite a neat arrangement, really. Very positive compared to some of the other grips on other bikes and push bikes even, that are just pushed onto the end of the handlebar. So on this side I've had to cut off the tongue in effect, and the remains of the tongue, if you can see them very well, but they're actually on the handlebar down there between the new grip and the switch. So the actual tongue that pokes into the switch is still there, and it's still got the screw running through it. I had to cut the grip down to length at this end, but that's okay. So this one is kind of fine. It's not quite as close to the switch as it used to be because of the difficulty of getting the tube that's inside the new grip over the remains of the plastic tube that used to be on this one, and that is necessary to keep the tongue held underneath the switch. So that's that side. The other side, so I've still cut in pieces slightly. There's actually the throttle mechanism. This is actually a metal die casting of some kind, and then this little tongue under here is part of the die casting, this half shell. The rest of the front shell is here and is plastic, but that just, see a little hook there, that hooks under there and just screws in to give you the full throttle round. And then there's the switch here, which or half of the switch at least, which has the plug in it for this plug here, and goes over that side and covers up the screw again, similar to the near side. That, incidentally, I reckon is the data tag label. Is one of the ones that's fitted on my bike. There's about a dozen of them, I think, scattered around the machine, but there's one hidden behind that switch unit. There's one on the near side as well, and they're elsewhere on the bike for security purposes. Anyway, so on this side, if you undo this screw and take off this little shell, half shell, this grey plastic part that holds the throttle cable is actually part of a tube that runs right through the length of the handlebar. So from this end you can see the grey tube running to the end of the bar. So that, in fact, as originally supplied, had a similar rubber overmoulding to the left-hand grip, this one. So what I've had to do is use a sharp knife to cut away the original BMW rubber grip that I say was actually moulded onto this grey tube. So that took a bit of doing. There's actually some texture on the plastic, the grey plastic, to enable it to bite better into the rubber, rather than just having a smooth cylindrical tube. It's got some sort of lumps and bumps on it to better locate the rubber overmoulding. So anyway, it took me a while to slice off the original rubber grip, smooth it down with sandpaper and various degrees of sandpaper, get it reasonably round and to the level where I could get this Oxford grip to push onto it, which was a real struggle to get it on, but I managed to do it in the end. So now the new Oxford grip is pretty much replacing the original BMW one, and we're still using the original throttle mechanism. So now it's just a question of putting it back together, I guess, and then I can wire up the rest of the HotGrips leads by getting them underneath the tank somehow, and obviously clipping these things on so they don't flap about. So I'll do that later today. Just one other point while I'm here, the wiring loom has got these nice connectors on them, all weather protected and little seal on there, but on the loom there's also these blue connectors. There's one on this side, there's one on the other side. These aren't used on my machine, at least. They're just tucked into the switch mechanism, or into the switch housing. That fooled me to start with, because it just kind of fell out of the near side switch, and there is actually an extra socket on the near side switch, and I couldn't work out why I couldn't plug the blue connector back into that spare socket. Turns out that basically these blue ones aren't used at all. They say they're simply tucked into the switch housing. I assume that they'll be for the BMW version of the heated grips, but I'm not sure of that. And actually the wires look quite small, so it seems difficult to believe that they can be big enough to supply a heated grip, but it could be the case. Anyway, so those aren't used, but this one will just go back into the right hand switch when I put that back on. No problem. Okay, that's it, I think.